between May of 2020 and I'll say today, I've had somewhere around 60 to 65 closings. I've made double in 3 months this year than what I ever made in a year working at my W-2.
What's up, y'all? My name is Jay Helms, founder of the W2 Capitalist podcast and movement. This is episode number 156. I am joined by Derek Tellier. Got it?
Good.
Yeah, maybe. We're going to talk about mindset. And I know with just episode number 155, we talked with Robert Seifert about mindset as well. But it is such an important topic, and it's something we talk about all the time in the W2 Capitalist Mastermind. But let me introduce you to Knoxville, Tennessee volunteer fan, Mr. Derek. And we're going to get into his story. It's an incredible, incredible story. At 42, Derek decided it was time for some changes, right? You were 50 pounds overweight, out of shape, working a W-2 job that had become kind of a pain in the butt, right? And you had no plan for the future. So, Derek, first of all, welcome to the show. Thank you for your time today. But let's dive into this, man. At 42, you're looking to make some big changes, right? In some big areas of your life. So walk us through that. What happened? What was the trigger that just clicked for you? Said, all right, something's got to change.
Well, I guess a little bit midlife crisis. First of all, Jay, thanks. Appreciate you having me. Glad to be here. I guess you get to that point in your 40s and you're just kind of looking around at where your life is and what's going on. And there's always these questions that enter you. Are you on the right path? Are you where you want to be? And I had some very good friends who were into real estate and doing a lot of real estate. And they were people that I just kind of met, and they were trying to get me involved in real estate. And for me, I was just, I couldn't grasp it. And I don't know what triggered in me. I just kind of decided that I needed to be healthier. My dad's had a couple of heart attacks. I saw family around me as they were getting older, just not healthy. And I'm like, I need to be healthier. So I started just eating better first and then started exercising. And then this friend of mine that was into real estate, I knew he was a runner. So I started talking to him about, running. And it turns out he was like a running coach. He'd written a book. I mean, he actually knew quite a bit about running. So he started kind of coaching me from afar. And I started going to the gym. I started running on a treadmill. He started coaching me up to run races. I ran a half marathon. I went from like spring of 2016, having never run more than a couple of feet in my life, to spring of 2017, I ran a half marathon in Knoxville. Wow. In spring of 2018, I ran a full marathon with him. So he kept talking to me about this real estate thing. And 2018, I got my health kind of straightened out. You clear healthy body, healthy mind. It was amazing how much clearer I could see things and what my future could look like at this point, just because I had such a healthier body. So we do this marathon. And of course, after you run a marathon, you take a few weeks off from running. You got to let your body rest a little bit. And another friend of mine and I went on this weekend long motorcycling trip in just in the East Tennessee, Southeast area. We actually hit 5 states, 750 miles in 3 days. And we're on this trip and I'm looking around going, this is what I want. I want the freedom that comes along with it. I want the freedom to be able to wake up and decide I'm going to go ride my motorcycle all day. I'm going to go wherever. I'm going to go on a hike. It got into my head that I want that freedom, because in the meantime, I've just been working and making money and spending money and living the American dream. Right. So
right.
On this trip, I have this epiphany. I'm like, I need to do something. And initially it wasn't really real estate. It was businesses. You listen to podcasts, you listen to all this stuff, and it all kind of rolls in. So I called this other buddy of mine, the running coach, and I said, okay, I'm ready to change. I need something. I said, what do I need to do? And just to give you an idea of my mind, he says, download Audible and you got to listen to this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And this is where my W-2 mind was. I went, well, doesn't that cost money? Like, I don't have money. I work for a living. And he immediately started just beating me up. So I downloaded Audible and I listened to Rich Dad, Poor Dad that weekend. And it was like, those V8 commercials, right? I should have had a V8. What have I been doing? I mean, I know everybody in real estate has listened to that book and gone, wow, I just kind of at that point was like, okay. So I went to him and I said, what's next? And he introduced me to Bigger Pockets. And I literally went back to Bigger Pockets episode number 1 and listened to every single Bigger Pockets episode up to that point, working in the new ones. I was a big music guy. I listened to music when I ran, when I drove, when I rode. I was always listening to music. Turned all that stuff off, turned TV off, turned sports off, and I was 100%, self-education on real estate, on mindset, listening to audiobooks, listening to podcasts, literally nonstop. Just became everything, and just slowly over time that just starts to evolve. And you hear the same things from different people over and over and over again, and it just starts to get embedded into your brain. And so that's where it kind of started. And I just dove in full deep. I went all in on it. I started researching. I started going to meetups, local RIA group in Knoxville. I started going there. And then Bigger Pockets is, they got the local meetups that they kind of, you can do through their website. And I saw somebody was hosting one, so I went to it. And then they did another one. This is now fall of 18, I guess. And I went to their second one. That was August of 18. And I told one of the other guys there, I said, yeah, if they don't keep this thing going, maybe I'll start a pot.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start this, this meetup. So September comes around and they didn't do one. And I went, oh, shoot, I need to start a meetup now, because I told one guy I was going to do a meetup. So I did. I went on Bigger Pockets and I posted, East Tennessee meetup group. We met in Pigeon Forge at the Hard Rock Cafe, which is not the best place for a meetup
It's a little
because
loud.
it's a little loud and they don't have a room, but it was where we went. And I'm sitting at the bar and they had this table reserved for us. And they're like, how many people do you think? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe 8, maybe 10 people. And I'm thinking ambitious. And I'm sitting at the bar and I was supposed to start at 6:30 and it's like 6:40 and there's nobody there. And then somebody walks in and they said, hey, somebody's here. I was like, oh, cool. So we go sit down and start talking. Next thing you know, hey, there's some more people here. Hey, we had 18 people show up for that first meetup, strictly off of Bigger Pockets. So I started a Facebook page that night, and I'm more than 2 years in now, been hosting that meetup. We average about 30 people. We do it the last it's bounced around, but we do it the last Thursday of every month now. And I get about 30 people come in. It's strictly a networking event, no agenda, no speaker. It's literally just people coming, hanging out in a room and talking about real estate. I tell people you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So dug into that. Going on Knox REIA again. At this point, still don't own any real estate. I mean, at that point, this is
wait a minute. You lead a meetup.
Yep.
And you don't own a single door.
Yeah, this is 2019. Yeah, as we're getting into 2019, still don't own a door. I'm going to the Knox REIA meeting, and the guy who hosts it actually starts promoting my meetup. So here I am at Knox REIA with my name on a screen about my meetup. And I'm sitting here going, God, talk about imposter syndrome. I don't even own a door right now. So I'd gotten my real estate license in this time, but I'm still doing my W-2. The W-2 was a full-time thing. Real estate was about, saving on my commissions. It was about doing some investing. And I went through a part of this transition for me with reevaluating my life. And this is not something I recommend to people. I highly recommend you figure out a way to make it work. But I went through a divorce. I decided that divorce was a place that something I needed to do to keep my life moving forward. So I went through this divorce, took a lot longer than expected, as they usually do. My divorce was finalized on April 26th. That was a Friday, 2019. That Sunday, a property hit the market that was just perfect, sweet spot in the city. Yeah. I'm in Maryville. I'm south of Knoxville. It's in the city. I think it was $96,000 they had it listed for, which is like unheard of in that market. Run down. It had been a drug house. I mean, it was rough, but it was in an awesome location. So I took every single trick I had learned from Bigger Pockets, from Chris Voss, never split the difference, took every negotiating tactic I went in. I talked to some other local investors. I had an offer in that Monday. I had my offer accepted that Tuesday. We closed on it on June 1st, and I was officially a real estate investor. That was a full burr. Did a complete rehab. Took me 6 months to remodel it. Did a lot of the work myself, but hired out most of it. Got my tenants moved in, refinanced it, and literally got every single penny that I had put in back out of it. I bought it for $75,000. I put like 50 something thousand in, no, more than that, like 60,000 into it. It appraised at 190. I got 142.5 back out of it. I had to pay my closing costs, and I had a tenant in there paying $1,800 a month on a property that my mortgage payment was around $950 or so. So I mean, a true $350 cash flow on that thing. That was my first deal. So I just expected every deal after that to just be a disaster, because it shouldn't go that good.
Yeah, well, no, that's incredible. First deal is now you're hooked, right? But I want to
Yep.
back up to the very beginning. It's something we talk about a lot in the mastermind. When I talk to potential members of joining the mastermind and making sure they go to their RIA meetings or whatnot, is you had one person in your circle. He was a runner. You mentioned him. I don't remember his name. If you mentioned his name, and who kept introducing you to this idea and somebody you can lean on, right? And then he started telling you, hey, go to a local RIA meeting. Point being is once you got around people that were doing the same things and that they were supporting you, even though you didn't have any doors to your name, they were supporting your activities of becoming a real estate investor. That to me is when it all changed, right? I love the line though you brought up. Maybe you should sell this to Kiyosaki is should have had a rich dad, poor dad, right?
Yeah.
Instead of you should have had a V8,
Beautiful.
should have
Yep.
had a rich dad, poor dad. I want to ask you about your divorce though.
Okay.
Your ex-wife, did she support your real estate investing?
It wasn't even, I don't, she would have, it wasn't about whether or not she kind of really supported it. We had grown so far apart in our
Yeah.
relationship that it wasn't like it was a bad marriage. It wasn't like we fought. It wasn't like it was just a bad situation. It was more, I mean, I mean, like I said, that's why I don't advise going down this path because it was really kind of selfish on my behalf because I'm going this path and I'm changing my life and I'm going to be wealthy on every aspect of life. And I honestly, I felt like I felt like she was just going to be kind of along for the ride. You know,
Gotcha.
it wasn't really about, it wasn't about that she didn't support. She's just there,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it just wasn't where I felt I needed to be and just
Yeah.
mentally where I needed to be.
Well, I've got a buddy of mine. I feel like you're telling his story, but there's no way that you two know each other.
Yeah.
And he ended up getting divorced, and I look at him now, and it's just he's a completely different, happier human being. He's been married for several years now. Amazing why. I mean, just whole thing just turned around for him, right?
Yeah.
So again, having the people in your corner that are going to help you and they don't have to help you financially, but just
Yeah.
mentally be there for that support, right? And if you're in a bad situation, um, my advice is to get that cleared up first, whatever that
Right.
means for the listener. And on the flip side, when people want to come into the mastermind and that, I talk to them a little bit and say, well, and I find out that they're married because that's one of the questions I ask. What's your spouse think about real estate investing? And if their spouse is on the fence or they're not supportive, then guess what? You don't get to come into the mastermind.
Yeah.
First thing you got to do is get your spouse on board. Right now, could we help you with that? Possibly, but there is a financial commitment to being in the mastermind. And if your spouse is not supportive of you and you go and say, hey, I signed up for this mastermind, it's going to cost me this amount of money every month. That's just that we're driving a wedge
Yeah.
in a gap that's already there. So that's, I always advise people, this is a team sport. If you're not on the right team, get on the right team,
Yeah.
at least, get on the same page.
And one thing I
Right.
do
So,
want to make sure to be clear about, my ex-wife is a wonderful human being. We have a
yep.
daughter, and I was the workaholic, and I was the one always working. My daughter even talks about that I wasn't around a lot. We have a very good relationship now, my daughter and I, but my ex-wife did a phenomenal job of making sure that we together raised her
Yeah.
right. And and we don't talk a lot, my ex and I, but I have nothing but respect for her. It's just we just grew apart into different directions. So I want to be clear that to others out there, it was something that was, and she didn't see it that way as being best for both of us. Certainly,
Mhm.
she didn't desire the divorce in any way, shape, or form. But I
Right.
do firmly believe that even today, that it was the best thing for not just me, but for both of us, because
For both of
we
you.
both had different directions we needed to go in.
Well, good for you, man. I mean, that says a lot about your confidence in where you wanted to go and what you needed as a support mechanism, right?
Yep.
I think that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't. If you guys are listening, and I led on to thinking that your wife was a bad person, I did not mean
No,
for that to
no,
come out that
you
way.
didn't at all. I
You
just
wanted
wanted to
to
make sure.
extra clarify.
Yeah, I wanted
You
to
wanted
make
to
sure to make
underline it
sure.
and put a
Yeah.
couple asterisks by it.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. So now we're into 2019. you're hosting meetups, you're getting promoted for your meetup. You just now closed on your first door. What happens next? Because a lot of stuff happens from 2019 until
Oh, yeah.
2021, right?
In 18 months, a lot has happened. So during the process of that, doing that rehab, I while I was rehabbing that house, I also bought a new primary residence. At this point, I'm single now. My daughter's moved out. She's living with a friend, and it's myself and my dog in a 2,600 square foot house. It was just like,
Wow.
this is ridiculous. So I'm doing this rehab. So I go out and I start looking for a house to buy, and I wanted a duplex. I was hung up. I'm house hacking. I'm finding a duplex, and I'm going to house hack a duplex. There's not very many duplexes in the city of Maryville, a little town I was in. So I'm I started looking around and I find this little single family house built in 1935, but it had been updated and renovated. It had been a rental since the 90s when the current owners had bought it, and they had it on sale for 89,000. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to buy this house as a primary
There you go.
residence. So I
Yeah.
bought this little house. It had a little basement that initially I thought I could rent out that room to. I didn't end up doing that, but it was an idea. So I buy that house and I take my 2,600 square foot house, and now I'm like, I'm going to rent this place out. And I'm telling people I know, I'm like, I'm going to get $2,100 a month rent for this place. And everybody's like, you're nuts. It's never going to happen. So I put this thing on Zillow and on Facebook, and I only got 2 applications, but it only takes one. And
That's right.
and I found my tenants, and they paid $2,100 a month. Now, this is all kind of happening at the same time. So I've got my new primary residence, and I've got 2 rentals basically that I'm trying to rent out. One that I've just finished my rehab on, and then my old primary. So they both end up getting leased up almost at about the exact same time. I'm basically into
Nice.
2020 at this point. I did not have a single dollar worth of rental income in 2019. All I did was rehab this house and buy a primary. But between January and February, I got my tenants into my 2 houses. Now I'm officially a landlord. I've got 2 fairly nice cash flowing
Yeah.
rentals, and I've done a total at this point of 4 real estate transactions as an agent. 2 for coworkers of mine who I helped buy houses for, and 2 of properties that I bought myself.
For
The one I
yourself.
rehabbed and my primary. So 4 transactions, 2 of them were for myself. And now we're into 2020. So I'm plugging away at the W-2, and this friend of mine had been in the short-term rental space. And to backtrack a little bit, in mid 2019, she had said, I'm going to expand, because she was the #1 agent basically in short-term rentals in the Smoky Mountains. And she said, I'm going to expand and start a team. And, I really want you to be a part of it. And this is the same friend. It's his wife that got me into this. So they've seen
Right.
my entire transformation over the course of 3-4 years at this point. And
And
she's like,
when we're talking about transformation, we're talking about your rental portfolio, but we're also talking about you as a person,
oh
your
yeah,
mindset, your just outward look on life. I imagine just those types of things. That's the
oh
kind
yeah,
of transformation you're talking about,
oh
right?
yeah, this is a whole life transformation. This is not
Gotcha.
a one. I mean, this is everything about the person I am today. People who knew me 5 years ago are just like, who is this guy? I mean,
Losing the 50 pounds, running
yeah,
marathons. That's
losing
awesome.
weight, exercise, running, mentality. I still have to control my temper a little bit, but I've gotten very big into stoicism, and I've learned to really
Nice.
relax and stay calm through situations. I used to be a very frustrated, very angry person for a long time, and really needed to chill and all that. So yeah, totally,
Well,
total life change.
when you're in a W-2 that you just absolutely it's not fulfilling for you and you're just kind of
Yeah.
going through the motions. I've been there too. You get triggered over the most basic stuff that you don't need to get triggered over, and your temper, and it affects everybody around you,
Yeah.
right?
Big time. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. So, so anyway, so she's like, this is again, I'm backtracking a little bit, mid 2019. She's like, I'm going to start this team. And I still had my limiting beliefs. I still had the mindset still wasn't quite there. And she
yeah.
was still a little bit nervous because she'd been doing this for herself for so long. What's it going to be like to have a team? Am I going to have enough leads to keep everybody? If we go into a team, you have to start splitting commissions, so we had this conversation. She's like, well, are you going to be okay with, splitting commissions with me? And my idiocy of my mind is like, yeah, maybe this isn't the right thing. We've been friends for several years. Maybe this would be a bad idea for us to work together. So I sabotaged myself and didn't take the position with her. Went back to my W-2, plugged away. we come into 2020. I've got a couple of rentals now, and I was with the same brokerage. We're with EXP Realty, which is a basically an international brokerage. It's not like your traditional
Right.
brokerage, so it's kind of statewide. So we're in the same brokerage, and they would put up these things of top agents, in the markets and everything else. And every single month, her name is at the top, and her name is at the top. And then I start seeing the girl that she did end up bringing on her team is number two, and I'm like, so I literally called her up in March of
You mean you
2020.
crawled back on your hands and knees and said,
Yeah. Oh,
please?
I did. I called her up. Now she lived about 3 hours from me at this point. I called her up and I said,
Yeah.
"What are you doing Friday? When are you in town? Are you in town? Are you gonna be home?" And she's like, "I'll be at home." And I said, "You gonna be home Friday?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm gonna come see you." She's like, "You're 3 hours away." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna come see you Friday morning for breakfast." So I left my house at like 6 a.m. I drove out there. I met her for coffee, right, at Starbucks. And
Yeah.
I pulled up and she said, we had a brief, cordial conversation. And then I said, "I'm coming to work for you." And she just looked at me and laughed and she said, "Okay, you really didn't have to drive all the way out here to tell me that. I would have hired you in a
Over
heartbeat."
the phone.
And I said, "I know, but I'm old. I'm an old guy. I'm old school." I said, "I want to do this face to face." And it gave me an excuse to visit with her and her husband for a few minutes, literally a few minutes. I spent like an hour and a half with them and then I drove 3 hours back home. So this is March of 2020.
Yeah. Okay.
So I come back and I get back home and she's doing some calls with me. And she literally gives me like 7 leads in that first day that I'm officially on her team. All of a sudden, I have leads and I've got clients that I'm going to be selling to. Well, we all know what happened March of last year. 2 weeks later, COVID, and everybody freaks out and nobody
Yeah.
wants to do anything. So I fortunately I had the W-2. I wasn't dependent on the real estate income. So I start digging into kind of both, and we get past kind of COVID and things start to blow up. So I had my first closing, my first client that she'd introduced me to in May of 2020. Between May of 2020 and I'll say today, and I don't know the exact number to be honest, but I've had somewhere around 60 to 65 closings. So I
Wow.
did 4 in a year and a half, and I've done well more than 10x that just
Yeah.
by joining her team. And this year, as of right now, I'm the number one agent on the team.
That's
As we're
awesome.
into this year, I've made more money in 3 months. I've made double in 3 months this year than what I ever made in a year working at my
Last
W
year.
two. So I
You,
left my W-2 in November is the culmination of that story,
that's it.
because now real estate. And to fast forward a little bit, today my portfolio is 7 properties, 4 short-term rentals, 3 long-term rentals, and that's all been within less than 2 years.
So the lady you're talking about, that's Avery.
That is Avery Carr.
Avery.
Yep.
So how does somebody, I think leadership is such a huge piece of not only mentality, but, studying the market, bouncing ideas off of, and just being able to grow your business. Right. And, I struggle. Well, let me back up. How did you identify things in Avery that said, "Hey, I want to be a part of that"? Because there's a lot of brokerages out there that would not provide you what you've needed to be able to excel, right? And I'm not taking away
Yep.
anything of your hustle or grind. I can just tell by the
No, absolutely.
conversation, the tone of your voice, that you are, like a better phrase, a go-getter, like you're going to go out and get it. And, I asked this because, there's a lot of things in your story that we talk a lot about in the mastermind. And one of the things is, this question asked me the other day, it goes, "Do you know how, when people are in the mastermind, how many deals they do in the mastermind?" And I said, "Well, I don't know that specific number, but what I can tell you, 80% of the people who are in the mastermind for a year, their portfolio more than doubles." Right. And I don't want to take credit for that. I think I'm a part of it, just like every other member. But you surround yourself with a team, and you surround yourself with people who are going to inflict your mindset on, yes, you can do this. Here's what you need to look out for. I've been there before, right? Just like with Avery, how do you find that person if I'm wanting to be a realtor and turn around and attach my license to a brokerage that's going to give me the same kind of support and excitement and motivation that you've experienced with her? How do you find that person?
Well, on a broad range, I can't remember if it was Jim Rohn or I think Tony Robbins popularized it from Jim Rohn, but you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Absolutely. Yep.
So if you want to be a certain type of person, if you want to be in a certain place, the first thing you have to do is look really closely at who you're hanging around with right now and get around people who are
Yep.
doing what you want to do. It's osmosis. When you get around that, people automatically lift you up. People who support you. You've got to get, and that starts with meetups, RIAs, masterminds, all of that stuff. As far as Avery specifically, I did have an advantage in that I've known her for a few years. I saw
Yeah,
her
that's true.
develop, but at the same token, I worked my W-2 job. I worked in the Harley Davidson industry for dealerships for 20 years, 20
I was
plus
going to
years. I
ask
was
you what kind of motor you
yeah,
had, but now it's apparent.
yeah. I am I actually, well, we can tell that story later, but I was in the
Okay.
Harley Davidson industry for 20 years. But there's a saying in the Harley Davidson industry: if I have to explain it, you wouldn't understand.
Right.
So there's that comes along when you meet somebody who's a rock star, who's a superstar. There's I can't put any one single thing on it. There's just something about a person that has that drive and desire that this person's going places. And if you're not smart enough to see it and to say, it's not about riding their coattails, it's about I want to be a part of what they are building because they are way smarter than I am, right? If you're the
Right.
smartest person in the room, you need to find a new room. So
Yeah.
I knew and I saw it, I got to see it develop, which was the other side of it. I had an inside track to be able to get in, but I got to see it develop and she knew me. So that made it easier for me to get in. But at the same
Yeah.
token, once I got in the door, it's still all on me. I didn't
Right.
become,
Right.
I'm not sitting as the number one agent on her team right now because she got it to me.
Because
I
you
mean,
sat back
everybody's,
and waited for
yeah,
the spoon to come to your mouth. Yeah,
yeah. I have a
that's not
very
gonna happen.
distinct plan and a very clear destination of where I want to be. I'm sure it'll change because it always does, but I'm driving towards something and
Yeah.
I know what I need to do today to get there.
But talking about mindset and everything, I mean, these are big shifts, right? So when we talk about shifts, there's a very famous saying that growth happens outside of your comfort zone.
Yep.
Obviously, you went through a divorce. You said, "I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to start running. Going to be super uncomfortable day." I've never trained for a I've never trained for a 5K, let alone a
Yep.
half marathon or a full marathon. But I've worked out a time or two, and I know there are days like if you want to grow in the gym or grow on the track, then you're going to have to get into some uncomfortable situations, right?
Yep.
Um, how did you overcome like all that coming at once at you, right, in your life? The divorce, the losing the weight, the dealing with a job, changing industries with your job, right, and taking on this whole thing called real estate investing. How did you handle it all? I mean, what was the
Well, one, I think all of it happening at once in some ways made it easier because
okay?
I'm a workaholic. You're right. When I
Yeah.
was growing up, when I was a W-2 guy, I was 50, 60 hours a week. If I didn't put in 50, 55 hours a week, I felt like I was slacking. So I was just that, and I am better. And I don't know that I could ever consider myself truly an entrepreneur because I am definitely much better when I have tasks to do. I'm in a better position
Yeah.
and I drive better when I have. So the more stuff I had going on, it gave me stuff to do. I had things to work on. I was much better. If you don't have time to think about it, it becomes a lot easier to just do it. So with
Yeah.
all of that going on at the same time, I was always doing something. I never had time to sit back and ponder and think, well, what happens if? Because there was always something else to do. And it just pushed me. So for me personally, that was a big difference. I needed to just have so much going on. I use a term that I thrive in the chaos. That's when
I
I'm
do
at
too.
my best.
Yeah.
When it's just a storm going on around me, that's when I'm at my strongest. If things are calm and slow, I get bored, my mind starts wandering, and I start overthinking everything. And that's not where I'm at my best. My best is at solving problems when they're right here on the spot. Just
Yeah.
here, we got to do something right now. What are we going to do? I'll figure it out.
You and I are very similar in that nature. And I don't know if I'm at my well, I do feel like I'm at my best. I'm also at my most productive when that
Yeah,
happens. And
absolutely.
um we were talking about this the other day, again in the mastermind, and I got a little vulnerable with those guys a little bit. And I said, "Hey,
Yep.
I don't fail enough.
Yep.
I don't fail enough. And one of the things that I've changed in the way that I run my business, I basically time block. If it's not on my calendar, it does not get done.
Yep.
Right. So I basically went to my calendar. If there was an open spot, I filled it with something. So now my days are just lined up where I'm going down through this and I'm so busy. Like the moment a time block comes up, whatever I'm doing stops, and I go to the next thing. And for the last two, and this is something I did 2 or 3 weeks ago. It has been the most productive 2 or 3 weeks of my W2 capitalist
Hmm.
career, right? And it's been incredible to see. So I'm the same way, and when you do that, I think you get the perfectionist out of you, because that's one thing that I struggle with, is being a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And I know that if I have those things stacked up in my calendar like that, something's going to fail. Something's absolutely going to fail. I'm going to miss something. I'm going to miss a phone call. I think we had to reschedule this once,
We
maybe
did.
twice because
Yeah.
of this, because of that. But um, nonetheless, it's, you're balancing everything. I think you're doing an amazing job. And your story is just incredible. You have a great way of delivering it too. So, I want to wrap up with a couple of things. Number one, I want to give a shout out to Luke and Avery Carl, who you mentioned Avery
Yeah.
a couple of times. You spotlighted them. They're not just your bosses, but they've been great friends for years and kind of helping you get into investing, but also become, one of the best realtors in Knoxville, Tennessee. Richard Hilton, is that
Yep.
also? So shout out
Richard's
to
the guy
Richard.
that 3-day weekend road trip.
Yeah,
That was Richard and I. He was a mentor of mine in the Harley business, and yeah, just a phenomenal human being. So
awesome.
helped me in that business, but also just helped me be a better person.
And I bring up those two folks not only because I feel like, as much as you've talked about, especially Avery, in this last 45 minutes or so, you wouldn't be where you're at without them in your
Nope,
life.
not at
And
all.
my encouragement to the listener is, hopefully this is resonating with you, and you realize, if you don't have an Avery or a Luke or Richard in your life, you need to go find them, right? You need to go find that tribe. It might just happen to be Derek and his Knoxville, Tennessee meetup, right? Or not Knoxville. You're in your
Well,
meetup's actually in
my meetup now is in Knoxville. I do host the meetup. I used to bounce
okay.
it around between Maryville, Knoxville, and Sevier County, which is Pigeon Forge area. But I stick to Knoxville now. It was easier. It was a little bit too loose. So my meetup is in Knoxville, but I live in Pigeon Forge.
Gotcha. Is that home of Dolly Parton, right?
Sevierville technically is the home of
Yeah.
Dolly Parton, but it's all one area. Pigeon Forge, Sevierville, Gatlinburg. Most people, Gatlinburg is the city that most people have heard of, but it's really all the same area. But yes, this is Dolly Parton's home. We got Dollywood right down the street.
All right, Derek, pleasure having you on today, man. Getting to know you a
Thank
little
you,
bit
Jay. I
better
appreciate it.
today. And I know you're active on Instagram when you have time. Where can people find you if they're in the Knoxville, Tennessee area specifically? Where can people find out and get connected with you?
Facebook, for as far as social media, is the easiest.
Okay.
That's where I'm most active. And again, not super active. My Instagram is at Running Biker Realtor, but I am not at all active on it. I do watch it. I'll respond if somebody sends a message, but I'm not active on there. Um, East Tennessee, East TNREI Meetup is the Facebook page for the actual meetup. But if you find me, if you search me, there's only a couple of Derek Telliers in this country. So if you search me, you'll find me pretty easily. You can Google me. I'm pretty an open book. Every Saturday morning after my long run, I do a live video on Facebook that I share across
Nice.
my pages. Just a little motivation, a little something going on. So yeah, just Google me. You find me. I'm not hard to find.
That's awesome. I'll make link to all those in the show notes. And if I were doing a video after I ran, it doesn't matter how long it'd be. It would just be me hunched over, grabbing my knees and sucking wind. So it's we're gonna change that though.
Takes
As soon as
time.
this
It
pollen clears
builds.
up, it's
Yeah, it's a little bit at a time. I didn't wake up and go run a marathon. It's one
yeah.
step at a time, and you build towards it.
Well, the funny thing is, my wife is she's a runner. She runs about 3 miles every day. Went to college, full
Nice.
scholarship as a cross country, and here I am as a sloth and don't do anything. So
That's
anyway,
all right.
yeah, you're the yin and the yang when it
That's
comes
it.
to
Opposites attract, right?
that.
Here you go.
Derek, thank you again very much. I will talk to you very soon.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate it.